Is cardboard killing your garden? After all, it comes with all manner of ink, glue, tape, and even chemicals used in the manufacturing process. So what place does this have out here, if any? So let's look at the facts, starting with that old sticking point, glue. Now in cardboard there are two types of glue. The first glue is the type used to actually make the cardboard itself. So in these examples, it's the little corrugated bits here that's the glue's all joining that together. Now that type of glue is made from plant starches such as potato, rice and tapioca, which makes it incredibly harmless and perfectly fine to use in the garden. Then there's our second type of glue that's used to kind of form the boxes themselves, used in the seams to join it all together, or here for example. Now this type of glue isn't necessarily plant-based, so we must be a bit wary of this type. Now it's used in such little amounts that I don't really worry about it, but if you're a purist and you don't want any of this type of glue in your garden whatsoever, well, it doesn't take a moment just to cut or tear that out. Most tape like this is plastic, so won't degrade easily, so remove it along with any staples used to hold the boxes together. Most big online companies now use this biodegradable tape, but it's held together with these strings here. The tape itself degrades pretty quickly, but the strings can hang about, so I'm inclined just to remove it anyhow. If anyone knows, by the way, what this string is made of, I'd quite like to know. Let me know in the comments. Some labels will just rot down with the cardboard, but others are treated in some way, perhaps with a plastic coating. This will help to make them weatherproof so they don't just come off in transit. There usually aren't that many labels on your average bit of cardboard, so it pays just to remove any labels you come across as well. If you find labels are pretty well stuck on, then wetting the cardboard for a bit before peeling them off will really help. The vast majority of inks used directly on cardboard boxes like this are actually soy-based, making them completely safe to use in the garden, and the same goes for newspapers for that matter. However, for kind of glossy cardboard like this sort of cereal box here, or magazines, catalogues that's kind of glossy, well, this stuff might contain heavy metals and other nasties. Now, soils do contain heavy metals naturally, but adding more to it, well, there is potentially a risk there for health. So just to be on the safe side, I wouldn't add this stuff to the garden. Plus, glossy materials like this take longer to break down into the compost or soil. So for that reason, I would just confine this to the recycling pile. Most plain brown cardboard is not treated in any way, but sometimes it is, for example with chemicals to repel water or as a fire retardant. Now this is quite unusual, so I really don't worry about this, but if you do happen to know that your cardboard is treated, then do recycle it, don't use it in the garden. So here is my little pile of prepared cardboard and packing paper here. It's been stripped of any labels, inks, there's only natural inks here, there's no glue, no staples, it's all good clean stuff. All that's in here are plant fibres and starches derived from plants, so it's completely safe to use in the garden. And there are a few ways I like to do this, but even some of those can prove controversial, and more on that shortly. Now the first obvious use for cardboard is as a compost ingredient, and Rosie is well camouflaged here and in danger of getting composted as well. We don't want that, do we, darling? Right, off we go. Now the ideal compost heap has a mix of ingredients that give a carbon to nitrogen ratio of about 30:1, so 30 parts carbon to 1 part nitrogen. This stuff is almost entirely carbon, which makes it an excellent source of carbon-rich ingredients to balance out more nitrogen-heavy stuff like, say, grass clippings. So at this time of year, when there aren't many natural brown ingredients with a high carbon content around, like, say, fallen leaves, this stuff is gold dust. Like any compost ingredients, the smaller they are, the quicker they will decompose. So do tear up your cardboard into smaller pieces before adding it. Seeing as so much of what we buy online comes delivered in cardboard boxes, what we have here is an abundant and incredibly useful supply of carbon-rich browns. Now, the best way to use this is to mix it with greens such as seed-free weeds, old spent crops and grass clippings. Add your browns and your greens in thin layers like this, and if you're after compost that much quicker, give it all a good turn from time to time to introduce plenty of air. Cardboard for making compost is a no-brainer, but cardboard for sheet mulching, suppressing weeds and so on, can be controversial. So why is that? Well, in drier climates, if cardboard repeatedly dries out, it can just sit around for quite a bit of time. Whereas in wetter climates like mine, most cardboard underneath the mulch should be gone within 6 months or so. And cardboard readily repels moisture. Look, just runs off. Underneath it's still nice and dry. So we've got to really thoroughly soak this so it becomes nice and pliable and the water can get through to underneath. We need to prime the cardboard once it's laid down by thoroughly watering it before we put on our mulch on top to hold it all in place. And then once you've got your garden set up like behind me here, well, keep it really well thoroughly watered so that cardboard doesn't dry out too much. For me, the absolute best use for cardboard is when creating new growing areas or new raised beds such as these. It'll stop the weeds wiggling their way up through to the surface. Cardboard is very effective at smothering weeds and lawn to kill them off. And then you can just put your growing medium on top and plant into that. It removes the need for any heavy digging and tangling with bothersome weeds. There's little chance of the cardboard drying out underneath all of that growing medium, and by the time the roots grow down to meet it, well, it would have already started softening up and decomposing so the roots can grow down into the native soil beneath. It's exactly how I started these raised beds here. And it's how I cleared this area behind me here without the need for heavy digging. Plant roots and of course soil life needs to breathe, and there's some debate about whether laying cardboard on the soil surface might create a bit of a barrier that makes it harder for the air to get down there. This is kind of true for really heavy, wet, clay soils, but really the effect is very minimal. This will still allow some good air exchange, so I wouldn't worry about it. And then there are termites, which prefer cool, damp conditions and a ready supply of cellulose found in wood fibre products, which makes cardboard ideal. But unless termites are already a problem in your garden, laying down cardboard is highly unlikely to attract them in from elsewhere. So for me, cardboard will always be a welcome source of free and abundant material to use in the garden, whether starting off new growing areas, controlling weeds, even growing potatoes in. This stuff really is gardener's gold, isn't it? I'll catch you next time.